You know, you saw, did you watch the Shane Carwin fight?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't, but I heard that he finishes all his rounds, or all his fights within the first round. What happened to him after kicking the shit out of Brock Lesnar for the first round? He burnt himself out.
He was depleted after the first round.
There you go. So my guess was if he wants another title shot, he's going to have to be able to push his lactate threshold a little bit further. Or hit him on the button.
Yeah. Well, hit him harder in the first round.
That's right, yeah. Awesome. Anything else you guys can think of?
Well, I should just mostly focus on his heart rate and how long I can push him to his threshold, and then before he starts recovering, before we start working again.
Yeah, so look at kind of what his drop-off is. Stick to the work-to-rest ratios that you know of. So anaerobic lactate, I would start with just a 1-to-3 work-to-rest ratio. So if you push him as hard as you can for 45 seconds, make sure you give him, you know, 1.5 to 2 minutes of recovery. Then see how he does the second time, and then as he's going, start shortening his rest time and see what happens to his heart rate and how effective he is at bringing it back down. It's kind of hard to say because every athlete's really different, right? And every different activity you put them through. So if it's just hitting a bag versus kettlebell swings or crawling with tubing or any crazy stuff that you might do with them, really they're going to react differently based on force and how efficient they are in that particular movement pattern. So that's why I find it really effective for these guys is let's change it up constantly and then stick with just the 1-to-3 work-to-rest ratio and then start paring their work-to-rest ratio down. So they might go on 1-to-2.5, 1-to-2, 1-to-1.5, 1-to-1, and then now you're really dealing in lactate and they'll be able to have a little bit more of a tolerance that way than trying to kind of figure out what their heart rate might need to get to. Does that help?
Yes.
I think it's easier to also manage too with your client because it's easier to manage your stopwatch and then just as they're going, go, what's your heart rate at? And if it looks like it's coming down, you know, 40-50%, then yeah, you got to jack them up again. And then your next set, you might have to give them a little bit less rest. So, and bear in mind, as they're training, you know, their heart rate will also give you a good indicator of whether or not they're getting enough rest and recovery. Because as you know, the tolerance level for that type of training is very, very low. You know, so mix up periods of strength and power work with days where you're doing your anaerobic threshold stuff, because guys aren't going to be able to train every single day at that level of intensity. They need to have the recovery. So on those days that are super intense, you want to have a short duration of your workout spent on that. And also where you're not going to spend a lot of time doing a whole lot of skill work with them either. So if they want to do technique boxing stuff, I mean, if they have a tolerance for it because their background's in boxing and they've had that high aerobic capacity before where they're, you know, these guys can skip like crazy, then, or jump rope like crazy, then, you know, you might be able to push them a little bit more. But number one factor with anything you're doing with your clients is each individual will respond differently to a different level of training. So there's no real right, wrong answer as there is trying to find the appropriate intensity, volume, rest and recovery that you need for each individual.
Joe, I got a question for you. If you want to just train an athlete all around throughout each three of the energy systems, oxidative, ATP, and glycolytic.
Yep.
What's the workout period that you would focus on one particular system? Would you go like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, whenever you're focusing on that particular system, so they have an all-around, equality in each of the systems?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I like that because, you know, not too many people get the variety of training that they need, and maybe they really like all of the above. I tend to, if I'm going to do it on a weekly basis, I might do their aerobic training closer to the end of their work week. So if their day one of their training starts on Monday, I might have it on a Friday or a Saturday where they're doing their aerobic training. Because if, as you know, throughout the week, they're going to become more taxed and their need for rest and recovery is greater. So always do your lowest intensity stuff closer to the end of the week. So if you built a microcycle where you wanted all 3 of those involved in that microcycle, because that's what the client really prefers doing, then yeah, leave the aerobic stuff to the end of the week. Leave the stuff that's more intense to the beginning of the week. So you'd maybe do their anaerobic lactic stuff when they're most refreshed or coming off their rest period, and then do their strength and power stuff in the middle. So that would be one way of doing it. The other way would be, I wouldn't spend too much time in volume of aerobic training in the same time you're doing anaerobic stuff, because sometimes there will be some interference with that. But I mean, if they're just using aerobic training as a way to flush the system as their rest and recovery, then great. But if you're trying to do aerobic intervals and do sprints or doing work in the ring for greater than 2 minutes at a time, then that's going to be far too taxing for them by the end of the week. So a lot of it, again, is going to come down to intensity, right? So if they're below 60% of their maximal training heart rate with aerobic training, then yeah, go ahead and leave it to the end of the week, and they'll be able to use it as a bit of a rest and recovery mode to help flush some things out.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question or get to what you wanted with it?
Yeah, that was it, thanks.
Okay.
Anybody else? John,
Yes, my friend.
how you doing?
I'm rocking it.
Hey, we really appreciate your time, and we're definitely going to want to get you back in at some point. Maybe we can fly you down.
I would love that.
That'd be fun.
You guys would take me to a Texans game?
Yeah, we can do that.
Nice. I gotta see.
Yeah,
I want the full Texas experience, man. I want empty beverage containers in the pickup trucks. I want to see gun racks. I want the whole bit.
we'll see what we can do. Hey, just one last thing closing up, and I've done this with I've done this with DP, and I didn't get a chance to do it with Haley, but I want to do it with everybody that comes on. A lot of times we will go through explaining to the students kind of, I always tell them whenever I was first getting into the industry, this type of stuff was like, obviously it wasn't available, the education we're getting now.